We all have memories of our childhood science classes, maybe not of what we learned so much as what they were like. Confusing, difficult, or worse still, just plain boring.
The big challenge for me is I've got there's so much information I want to share. The hard part is to find time to get across a lot of information and at the same time let the kids discover some of it for themselves. That's a real challenge.
Professor Jim Moore from the University of Georgia is determined to find a way to make science teachers' jobs easier and make science classes more fun.
I think most of us in the sciences are really frustrated by the fact that so few of our kids nowadays are interested in science.
Professor Moore teaches anatomy, and teaching such a complicated subject is no easy task. He has spent years improving his methods, and several years ago began incorporating animations into his teaching.
One of the hardest things to learn as a veterinary student is what you can feel when you can't see something. And you can describe that all you want, but unless somebody can take your description and create a 3D image inside their head of what you're talking about, a lot of times they're lost. And so creating a model that allowed us to simulate that, all of a sudden we knew that the students were seeing what we saw.
Professor Moore and his colleagues produced a series of animations called the Glass Horse Project, and it radically improved the way he could teach. He noticed the improvement in his students right away. The glass horse is so effective that it's now a common teaching tool throughout the veterinary world. But being a scientist, Professor Moore wanted to prove scientifically that animations really are better for teaching complex scientific principles. So he put together a team to design a brand new series of animations to test precisely how effective they could be.
We were trying to develop a better way to teach students processes inside the cell that are really difficult to visualize. Heretofore, the students would have to remember charts with arrows, and there are no arrows inside the cell.
The team tested these new animations on groups of students and compared the results to previous groups who were taught using traditional methods.
What we found with the animations is that all of a sudden this sort of abstract series of words and names and processes became real to them. So it really lifted the bottom of the class up to a point at which they were equivalent to their peers.
Professor Moore's team had struck educational gold. They had developed a method that improves the performance of struggling students without slowing down the talented performers. But it was when Professor Moore met Professor Steve Oliver that they both realized how these techniques could help transform high school science.
He showed me some examples of the animations they had created in the Glass Horse Project and related things, and my comment was that teachers would love things like that. And his response, as I remember, was, well, let's make them so.
Professors Moore and Oliver wanted to build something really special to help teachers make their classes as interesting as possible. One of their first steps was to expand the team to include an expert on educational games.
Games are great places where you can fail repeatedly. We sat down and spent a lot of time and actually spent an entire meeting one time doing a game design challenge. Like, what can we find that's a game here?
The team developed Ozzy, a game to help high school kids learn about osmosis. The game is already being tested in high schools with some success.
The kids in my advanced placement class, when they started playing Ozzy, they absolutely loved it. There were big smiles and cheers and arms raised above their heads in exaltation.
But the Ozzy game is just a small part of the approach the team is taking. They are also developing several more in-depth three-dimensional modules. In these, the students will investigate real-life scenarios while learning about various scientific principles such as diffusion, osmosis, and filtration.
One of the things the teachers told us was how much their students enjoyed doing case studies. And so we thought, well, now that gives us a very interesting avenue that gives you a very nice way to engage the students and to make it all relevant.
Using the case study approach, the group is producing several interactive modules. Each of them revolves around a particular investigation.
One of the things that we've been trying to focus on is the effect of diabetes, because it's becoming so prevalent in school children these days. One of the consequences of diabetes is kidney failure, and the kidney is incredibly important in basically filtering the blood within the body. So in order to get across the principles of filtration, we went to the dialysis machine, which is basically an artificial kidney.
Using the stunning interactive simulations the team is creating, the students will be able to dive into a dialysis machine. From here, they can manipulate the filters themselves and observe the effects on the outcome of the dialysis treatment. Another module revolves around osmosis. Students will be able to fly into the brain of a calf that is having seizures because there is too little salt in his blood. They will be able to observe the effects of various treatments to try to solve the problem. The animation team painstakingly builds each module to be visually appealing, while the scientists ensure that it is anatomically accurate. The team is even recreating a town where a large train wreck took place. They will then animate the train crash itself and the subsequent chlorine gas spill to introduce a module about diffusion. All of this requires a lot of effort, but will it make a difference to student learning?
I think if we can create depictions of the tissues and what happens in the tissues, and we can validate those by having a lot of scientists and others working on it, I think students have a lot more when they've learned the biology.
All of these modules are still in development, and when they are finished, the team will begin testing their impact on teaching. There are plenty of reasons to be optimistic about their success.
You know, if a picture really is worth 1,000 words, and if animation is running at anywhere from 15 frames a second to 30 frames a second, then it's obviously every second's worth 15,000 to 30,000 words. I mean, that's the math.
I do think that within the next 15 years, 10 or 15 years, high school biology teaching will change dramatically because of technology. And so I think we are on the front edge of a wave that will change biology teaching entirely.
I'm just so convinced by what we've done in the last 10 or 11 months in really using the technology and getting it to the point where the kids are in the middle of it. I'm hopeful that is going to make a huge difference in how they learn as well as what they learn.